All right. So we are live. My name is Zach O'Farrell. I'm the Director of Education Programs at the Afro-Latin Jazz Alliance. And we're here this is part of our regular Wednesday Masterclass series. We're here with someone who has known me since before I was born. He's known me since I was just a mischievous glimmer in my dad's eye. That's the great Papo Vazquez, trombonist, composer, pirate, and assorted other things. From what I hear, he's a good cook too. And yeah, I'm very excited that Papo is joining us today. He's an incredible musician with experience that is even greater than the amount of years he's been at this, which is a lot. But yeah, so I don't want to say too much. We're gonna kind of be structuring this like a question and answer. Papo and I prepared some things to talk about, so we'll be having a conversation, and at various points, when people have questions, please ask away. But yeah, without much further ado, let's get started. Papo, do you want to say anything before I start asking you questions?
Nope.
All right.
I've already said. I think it's after 45 years, I said no.
Well, you're about to say more, but
I'm about to say more. Yeah. But
I'll be bringing those things up.
All right. Actually, I'm kidding. Listen, I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity and for the invitation. Okay, Zach, and it's Alja, right?
Yeah. Very
good. I think your family they're watching also. So
I hope so.
Yeah, they're watching. Anyway, but just say hello to Arturo and everybody else.
Yeah. All right. So let's jump right in. I think I want to start with a very broad question that has to do with your experience in so many different contexts and with so many incredible artists. And that's basically one of the things we discussed, is that you are very familiar and have lots of experience both in straight ahead jazz worlds with cats like James Moody and Slide Hampton and just tons of incredible musicians, as well as the Latin jazz and salsa worlds, playing with like Conjunto Libre and playing with Andy and Jerry Gonzalez and Tito Puente. And I just wanted to kind of hear your thoughts on different approaches you have on those two streams, and if there's like any type of overlap in your approaches, where it's different, how your experience on one side has informed the other, and just whatever thoughts you have on those two different but very, very intimately related types of music.
So I guess experience playing in different contexts, right? That's basically what you mean.
Yeah.
Let's say, why don't we start with popular Latin music?
All right.
Popular Latin music, right? So when I say popular Latin music or popular dance music, Latin dance music, or what they call salsa or Afro-Cuban dance music, you really need to do your research. You just can't, practicing your horn and practicing your scales, that's part of what we do. That's what we gotta do. But depending on the style of let's say, for instance, if you're gonna play with la ritmo oriental, or let's say you get called to play with la Aragon, right? La charanga Aragon, and they want you, and you're the flute player. You should definitely sit down and study Richard Edwards. By the way, actually, you should sit down and check out Richard Edwards. Period. That's one of my all-time favorite. Not jazz master. Well, he's a master. Period. He's a master at improvisation.
Oh, sorry, Papo. Not to jump in too much right now, but you know what? I'm gonna write down names of artists and bands that you mentioned, so that maybe you and I can kind of develop like a playlist for people to listen to. after.
No, definitely. I would say that most probably we'll probably have to do this again because I mean, let's like when I do let's say interviews with newspapers or with New York Times or whatever, I tell the guy, listen, I'm gonna do this interview, but you know, I'm gonna throw a lot of information at you, and then you probably won't even get half of it, you know. So that's what's gonna happen today.
That's what we want.
Right. Well. Anyway, but you have to pay respects to whatever style of music you're playing. You really do. You just can't play a jazz solo on top of something that has a you gotta talk in the language that you're trying to improvise, right? That's what or improvise or interpret the music. You follow? So that in itself could take a whole lifetime. You know, if you studying how to learn how to play Afro-Cuban music, learn how to improvise on top of that, you know, and I think that's basically it. Basically it. You know, I just mentioned Richard Edwards, but you know, me, you know, I mean, the bottom line is you have to study the style of music that you're going to be playing. Mm-hmm. Follow? So, and also as an instrumentalist, you know, you got to practice what you're going to play. But you can't be practicing like a classical book, and then go do a jazz gig. That's not going to work. That's not going to make it. You know, if you're going to do a jazz gig, you got to study. You got to learn that language. You got to practice that language. You'll do a Latin jazz gig. Now you got two languages. You got to become fluid at. You follow?
Mm-hmm.
And so you know, that said, now see the more that we're just talking, this is one subject. The subject was experience in playing in different contexts of styles of music, right? So let's say each style that you're gonna be hired to perform in, like let's say you get hired to play, like I used to play with Loremin Machado and the Saraba Bahia band. It's a Brazilian carnival style band, so like, you know, I have to check out what you know, and that was like, so. And once I went to that, I opened that door. There's a whole world in there. You can spend years just studying just that by itself. Then you close that door. Okay, let me study New York Latin jazz music. Boom, go into that. You go to that room, you never come out because you talk about Mongo Santa Maria, Tito Puente. You talk about how, if you're a trombone player, you got to study Barry Rogers. You got to maybe check Jose Rodriguez. Then it's just endless amount of information that you have to deal with, and that'll make you a better player.
So
and you have more fun.
So when you are studying different types of music, what are you looking for? Are you listening, like, I understand you're probably listening both not as a trombonist but also just as a general musician, right? What is your process?
Well, let's say if you go do for example, I had a call yesterday from a good friend of mine, and we had his name is Arnie Paris. We had done a tribute to the Fort Apache band, right? It had been years that I had played that music, you know. So all of a sudden he says, "Well, here's the music that you guys played back then." I'm going, "Oh my goodness, 3-5-4 Form by Wayne Shorter." That immediately I'm looking at the composition. That was already telling me that aside from, you know, the style because Latin music or the art of improvisation is a call and response kind of thing. You know, there's always there's a conversation happening on the stage. You know, but aside from the rhythmical conversation and the harmonic and melodic conversation, you know, a song like 3-5-4 Form, you got to study the changes. You got to sit down. Now you're talking about you should definitely, you know, everybody that's interested in improvisation, you should play a little bit of piano so you could be able to play the chords and hear them and look at them and all that stuff, you know? So did I answer your question? Because I'm telling you, I'll get lost.
That's okay. It's fine if you get lost. We want to hear you get lost and hear where you take us. Um, yeah, I think you answered the question. And but what I was so another thing you're starting to allude to is that, well, like you said, when you said if you're playing a Latin jazz gig, you have to be fluent in two languages, right? So what is your process? How do you get yourself there? How do you get yourself into understanding those two languages as something, as two things that are separate but also are very closely related and very often used together?
Well, listen, if you want to play Latin music, you definitely got to understand the rhythmical concept of what you're playing.
Mm-hmm.
And once you go there, you start learning the different rhythms, and it's like the drummers, like the guys that play in my band. I always tell them, listen, if it's a jazz drummer, I tell them, you got to study what these guys are playing, and also they got to study what you're playing, but so you can be able to communicate. So rhythmically in Latin music, if you're not rhythmically communicating with the rhythm section, you're not playing our music. You're just playing jazz riffs on top of it. That's what it is. And it's just, so it's the same way. You can't go to a jazz gig and try to impose that culture into it. I mean, unless if that's what you want to do. If you want to do you want to integrate stuff, that's something else. That's what happened with I guess with Latin jazz or Afro-Cuban jazz, in New York City. But now it's way beyond that. It's Afro-Puerto Rican. That's what I do. I do Afro-Puerto Rican jazz.
Well, there's a lot of overlap in those two worlds anyway, isn't there?
Well, Puerto Rican culture is a whole thing unto itself.
Yeah.
Now you got to understand that Cuban, the Afro-Cuban influence on Latin America has been very powerful, very strong. And a lot of Puerto Rican composers were famous Cuban music composers like Rafael Hernandez. A lot of people think that Rafael Hernandez is Cuban, but he's Puerto Rican.
Mm.
There was never, that I remember when I first came to New York, there was nobody, there was no difference between being a Puerto Rican and a Cuban or whatever. We were all same family,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like to be a Puerto Rican musician, you're expected to be familiar with all the Cuban styles, and then also you have this whole other wealth of knowledge.
Well, it's not even that. It's that you got to look at history. I guess I mean I'm not a historian, but as far as I think I see, there was up to a time there was, we were all going from, the Mr. Silva and a lot of Puerto Rican artists, we would just hold court in Cuba for months or a year or whatever. Or Sonora Matancera had, but the singer was Puerto Rican. What was his name? Right now he escapes my name, but there was it was all intertwined,
Yeah, there's a lot of exchange between those two countries, those two cultures.
And of course Dominican Republic. There was, it was all basically the same culture, or the three, they call the three Greater Antilles.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question related to that. I mean, what would you think, Papo, is the best way to integrate the three countries, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and Cuba? I mean, in order to teach, what structure?
They are already integrated.
Mm-hmm.
That already happened. It's basically the same culture. Just the difference is that some guys in the Dominican Republic live in. I mean, it's the. I think it was Martí, Máximo Gómez, and Betances. Those guys, they already that's already. We are the same. We're cousins. So there's no, you can't divide us. It's like you can't. I mean, we might speak with a little different slang or whatever, but you know, un jíbaro from the Campo de Puerto Rico and a Guajiro is the same thing. Mm-hmm. Un jíbaro from the Cibao, it's the same thing. So there's I mean, now there's different variations of stuff like the merengue, el dominicano, la bomba y la plena from Puerto Rico. Cuba has this, you know, the whole Cuban with the mambo, cha cha cha, la rumba, la guaguancó, the whole thing, lo bata. Forget about it. It's basically endless. It really is endless. And we're just talking about Puerto Rico, Cuba, and Santo Domingo. Forget about Haiti and forget. You start adding that, we forget about it. It's over. And actually, Haiti, Puerto Rico, Santo Domingo, Jamaica, we're all like, you know, we're intertwined. We are all intertwined.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Amazing. So I guess let me go to another question that's related to this, but is dealing more with you specifically as an improviser. And that's how do you differ in your as a soloist? How do you differ in your approaches if you're playing music that is, you know, Afro-Latin music, whether it's Afro-Puerto Rican or Afro-Cuban music over a vamp or a groove versus music that's over changes? Like, how do you differ in your approach? What different things you practice, different things you're trying to achieve, different ways you communicate with the rest of the band you're playing with?
Well, you know, listen, the bottom line is this. It's all different languages. You gotta speak that language. And you know, you want to play some jazz, or you want to play like John Coltrane, you gotta study John Coltrane. You gotta check, you gotta, you know, and this is a very extremely serious stuff. It's extremely serious business. You know, so it's a lot of practicing, a lot of studying. Same thing if you want to play a merengue, you should study Fefita La Grande or whoever, you know, like that, you know. So it just you got to pay respects to whatever you're trying to perform.
Who are some of the trombonists that you studied? Well, I know there's probably a lot of them.
Well, you know, actually, the guy that the reason why I became a trombone player was because I snuck into a dance with Willie Colón, and then I became a fan of Willie Colón. I'm like 13 years old. I saw them perform live. I was like, wow, I was really. But then all of a sudden I went and bought Eddie Palmieri records with Jose Rodriguez and Barry Rogers. Then now I became fans of Barry Rogers. And then at the same time, around the age of 14, I started playing with local bands, and I got to meet a gentleman by the name of Jimmy Purvis, and he introduced me to jazz at an early age, around 14 years old, and he gave me my first jazz record, which was J.J. Johnson Blue Trombone, and that kind of like really totally blew my mind. You know, I was able to relate to it because it was the trombone, but man, the way with J.J. was like, it's a whole different level, you know. I mean, I'm not saying that Barry was a whole different level, but it was just two different worlds, and I'm going like, whoa. But the player like JJ, you really got to sit down and you got to do your work, you know.
Yeah. How do you especially talking about a player like JJ Johnson? He was one of those trombone players in jazz who was doing things that people didn't think were possible on the trombone.
Well, yeah. Well, he created the bebop language on the trombone.
Yeah.
He's the boss.
So in studying that language, what other instruments and other instrumentalists besides trombone players have you looked towards?
Well, then my second record was John Coltrane live with the Village Vanguard. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking to you about I'm like 14 years old, so it's like when I heard that, I didn't understand that at all. I didn't know what the hell that was. I was like, oh my God, what is this? But the thing is that since the person that gave me that record was a very good friend of mine, he was an adult, but he was like my first mentor. I said, you know what? I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna keep on listening to this over and over and over and over and over. And all of a sudden one day it went like boom. I went, oh wow, I understand it. So I've been listening to John Coltrane and JJ Johnson and Barry Rogers and Alegre All-Stars and El Gran Combo, all that stuff, Cortijo, and also from my father's side, or from my family side, música jíbara, mountain music from my, because my father and my grandfather, they were troubadours, troubadours from the, so I have a whole bunch of stuff, in my pot, since just from an early age, and they used to play in the living room. And they were amateur players, but they played really great. They were, matter of fact, my grandfather, I think he played with Canario, who was one of the great. He was one of the great exponents of plena, música jíbara and plena music in Puerto Rico.
Can you tell us?
Huh?
Can you tell us, because you call your band Pirates Troubadour? Can you talk to us about that tradition and how musicians like your father and amateur musicians like your father and your uncle affected who you grew into being as an artist?
Well, who I grew up being into an artist, it was the name of my original band was called Papo Vazquez Bomba Jazz. That was back in 1984 when I started my first band in Puerto Rico after that group Goombella broke up in Puerto Rico, and it was Giovanni Dargo, Anthony Carrillo, Chichito Cepeda. That was the percussion section, and
you couldn't get any good cats?
Juancito Torres, huh?
You couldn't get any good cats?
Yeah. Who was Jimmy Rivera, Luis Quevedo, Hector Veneros, and Juancito Torres, and Jose Gamay on the bass. But the name of that band was called Bomba Jazz. And then that was in '84. By the time I got to New York, I recorded my first record. I was still using that name until somebody called me. People started calling me Mr. Bomba Jazz, and I kind of I wasn't too partial. I said, but I felt like they were pigeonholing me into a corner, and. So one day I mentioned that to the bass player. I was playing with Ruben Blaze back then, and the bass player Mike Viñas. I said, Mikey, I don't like this. I don't want to use this name no more, Bomba Jazz. He goes, you know what, man? You don't even need to use that, because what you really are is a pirate troubadour. I said, you call me a pirate troubadour? And that was the coolest thing. So I said, you don't want to call my band Pirates Troubadours. And also it's fun, and it gives also the newspaper guys something to work with, and they have fun with it. Like, sometimes we're gonna play a gig somewhere, and, the pirates are coming, hide your money, whatever. It's all fun, just to have fun. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, we really can't take this stuff, what we do, music, too serious. We gotta have fun. You know what I mean? And for Michael and if there's any other trombone players here, listen. One of my great mentors, Slide Hampton, said to me one day, he said, Papo, don't worry about it, because the trombone will always win. That was a joke, guys. but actually it's true. So it's like just have fun. You gotta have fun. You gotta enjoy yourself. Don't let it. And in any instrument, you can't let it get you gotta have fun with this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. It gives you a great logo for the band too, man. With the pirate and the saxophone, with the skull and crossbones. Killing. And so you also. So I guess I kind of would ask going back to the question asking what jazz players that influenced you outside of just trombone players. I guess it's worth asking that question about the other side of things. You mentioned Richard Eguas on flute before, and I can imagine there's a lot of musicians from that field that aren't necessarily trombone players who have.
Well, check this out.
And as a composer,
the guy that gave me my first gig in New York City, his name was Chocolate Armentero. He's also one of my favorite. Improvisers, Chocolate Armentero. So I would say to any serious a musician out there that wants to study this music, period, you gotta search and find and try to find who are the great improvisers and check them out. I mean, Chocolate to me is that he was one of the greatest he's like an unsung hero, man. This
Mhm.
guy, these guys, and these guys, they play with elegance. It wasn't this blaring, crazy trying to force. I'm gonna force myself for you to like me. Check how I play. No. They play with elegance and style, and it's like, oh man, it's beautiful. You know, it's like it really they're talking to you. They're cantando. You know, it's like wow. You know, those are the kind of players that I like. You know, you know. You listen to John Coltrane play a solo or Lee Morgan or any of those guys, Clifford Brown, they're not just playing scales or just playing eighth notes. They're playing melodies. The most difficult thing to do as an improviser is to play a beautiful melody. Trust me. And the most difficult thing to play as an instrumentalist is a ballad. That's the most difficult thing. Play a melody. You play me a melody and then you touch me. Now you're talking. You know, you can play all the scales you want and you can play whatever. You can that's impressionism. But to play a melody, that's something. Because now you're talking about sound. You gotta pace yourself. You gotta think about the how you gonna interpret the melody, how you gonna blow it. It's a whole thing. It's like when you're playing slow, because music is just like let's say one note. You're gonna play one note in the instrument, and actually I don't even play this. I have it there just to mess around. My trombone is in the living room, but just to play one note, you gotta breathe. You gotta put the thing in your lips. Then you gotta put your lips together. You gotta vibrate them. You gotta get saliva. It's a whole thing just before you even play the note. You know what I'm saying? That's like, oh my, just that. So now let's say a body and soul. Oh, excuse me, I forgot to say, you gotta breathe. Just practice that. And just that there, you can play that like 1,000 different variations. You can play. You can use vibrato. You see what I'm saying? You see how difficult it is? Just a melody. Try to play me a melody. Like let's say a melody by Rafael Hernandez. Silencio. And it's just this. Duerme en mi jardín. Try to play that in an instrument, brother. That's just 4 notes. That's a whole thing there. And if there was something that those great players that we were talking about had, was they could play beautiful melodies during the improvisation, beautiful melodies. They're singing to you. Chocolate, Coltrane, Miles Davis, man. Miles Davis can play one note and kill you. I mean, matter of fact, there's a record of Miles Davis, I think live at Carnegie Hall. He playing, I think it was My Funny Valentine or Stella by Starlight. But he went, he played one note, and you probably get the record. Play that one note. He played one note, and all of a sudden you hear somebody I don't know if the guy was getting a heart attack or what he did or what was going on, but the guy was, oh my goodness, what's going on? Was it he liked this? He liked that song, that note that much, or I think it was that he. But Miles playing that note, man. This thing is some serious stuff. I mean, really serious stuff.
Yeah. It's funny because the way you talk about it, and I've thought about this listening to your records over the year too. The way you talk about it sounds almost like you approach some things less from the perspective of a typical, for lack of a more nuanced term, less from the perspective of a typical jazz nerd horn player, and you're really you're thinking like a singer almost. You're thinking like a troubadour.
You gotta, but all the great jazz players, they always talk about that.
Yeah.
Like when you're gonna play a ballad, or it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be jazz. It could be tango. It could be whatever. It could be a European melody. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It could be a Jewish melody. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
To learn the lyrics of the song, you gotta know. You should know the lyrics. You should know the lyrics. That way you can interpret the song properly.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, if you know the lyrics, you know what you're playing about.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like Dizzy used to say, you don't want to beat when you should have bopped. Maybe it's a climax of the song, and you're like, and you're playing pianissimo when you should be playing forte.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like te quiero. It's like, oh man, I love her. So you gotta say something exciting. I love the woman. Don't say, yeah, I love you, baby. That doesn't mean nothing. Baby, I want you to know something. I love you. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I love you back, baby. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Does that make any sense to any of you guys?
You gotta mean what you're gonna play.
Yeah. I think one guy has a question. You got to unmute yourself, pa.
Yeah. Now?
Yeah.
Un gusto estar aquí contigo, Papo.
Un placer, Juan.
So, talking about the way of express ourselves through the instrument, something that I've noticed in the young generations is a little bit like they just play scales, as you were saying, like scale up, scale down. So in a sense, we should be like actors. So even if you don't have like life experiences in, I don't know, suffering or stuff like that, you should try to be in the side of, as you were saying right now. If you're playing a ballad or something, even if you're never fall in love, you should try to be like in that ¿cómo se dice? En esa posición, no? In that, right? But that's something that I'm missing in the younger generations, right? It's all about showing off, it's not too much empathetic, no sé cómo se dice, empático, right?
Mira, I'm going to say, lo voy a decir en inglés.
Yeah, please.
I'll never forget, one of my other mentors, his name was Jose Rodriguez. He was Brazilian trombone player.
Yeah.
And he played with Palmieri. Him and Barry Rogers, they were a team. Anyway, I'll never forget, nunca me olvidaré el día que Jose, excuse me, I'm going to say, I was going to say it in English. Jose
You can
Rodriguez,
say Spanish, man.
No, he said,
Spanish for bilingual.
Okay.
Everybody?
No, well, Michael, I don't know if Michael could understand what we're going to say, so we got to.
Entiendo un poco.
Let's keep it in English so Michael can understand. He said to me one day, he said, and it was like, wow, that really like stayed here in my mind. He said, Papo Vazquez, Brazilian music is music of suffering. I was like, wow. That touched me because I feel like our music is music is supposed to portray that, suffering and being and happy and that's it has all those emotions. It's not about trying to impress people with how many scales and how much stuff that's fine and dandy. You need. There was something that came to my mind actually the other day. I said, you know what? This is interesting. These are what we have to. What we can't lose focus of is that all this stuff that we have at our disposal, like all these scales and all these, all these techniques and all the stuff that we practice and da. These are tools to play music. This is not music. That's not music. Those are tools that we use to play music. You understand?
Yeah. It's like words for poetry, right?
And I don't mean to sound like some kind of religious nut or something, but to me, music is very spiritual. There's something magical about it. So and the magic only happens when you have the right elements together, or people with the right intentions and and you know, I mean, you want to call it the Holy Spirit, or you want to call it the great
El igual.
whatever. You know, todo el mundo, como like we say, cada loco con su tema. Everybody's got, you know, their thing, whatever. But there's something else. You gotta understand. There's something else in music that doesn't have nothing to do with the physicals. It's something that we don't see. It's something the unseen. You know, like air, right? We can't see the air. We can't see air, but we're breathing. And if we don't get no air, we're done. We're done for, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that brings me to my next question, which is
Harlow, go ahead.
Is the Batacumbele period in your life? I mean, Batacumbele for us as listeners, it was very important because he created the songo sound, the bata sound, actually with the modern melodies, and a lot of brilliant. You guys were brilliant. I mean, brilliant musicians there. How did that impact you? How that Batacumbele period in your life?
Well, first of all, the songo that's the thing that's from Lo Bambang.
Okay.
Changuito.
Changuito and what's his name, the bass player, the leader of the Bambang.
Juan Formel.
Juan Formel. Those guys, they were the ones that invented that. And Changuito, exactamente, was actually my very good friend. And it's funny because Batacumbele came in the heels of a whole era of guys that were looking for something different. You see, like me, I'm a founding member of the Fort Apache band. You know, and back then in the late 70s, there wasn't too much Latin jazz. So I would say that Batacumbele is also came out of that whole revolution, you know, of that whole, like, it was like a movement, like a thing of young guys getting together. And when I say that, I'm talking about Jerry Gonzalez, Andy Gonzalez, Milton Cardona, Dave Valentin, Hilton Ruiz. Oh man, so Steve Barrios. There's a whole bunch. Wilfredo Vélez, Mario Rivera, Nestor Torres. You know, forget it. You know, it was like there were like a generation of guys that got together and changed everything. And then from there was involved in that whole scene was Eddie Wawa, Cachete Maldonado, my brother Larry Figueroa. But we were also at the same time members of the top Latin dance bands, say Conjunto Libre, Willie Colón, Riverbero, like that, right? You know, but we were also serious fans of Black American music. You follow? So we all, like me personally, I wanted to be like J.J. Johnson. I was like, I wanted to be like that. I wanted, you know, when I saw him as a little kid, I was like, man, it just stayed with me, you know. And I came to New York and and I played, and I'm extremely grateful for being part of the whole the salsa scene, or, you know, Afro-Cuban scene in New York City, whatever. And but there was something that it was in me already. It was like a little seed. And it was that whole jazz thing that from a little kid that stayed with me, and I wanted to be like that, you know. And then guys, like, it's funny, but sometimes there's things that are just in the air, and like everybody kind of like this, like people agree on we got to do this, and that's how all this thing came about, you know. It was a moment of experimentation, and of course a lot of sacrifice, because Batacumbele was created, but with a lot of sacrifice. You know, you got to sacrifice something. You know, you don't get something great out of just, you know, it's not an easy thing. You follow? That's why whoever came up with the saying of paying dues, that's a real thing. You want something, sometimes you gotta sacrifice for it. And of course, I'm extremely lucky that I've had my wife, who's been with me all these years, supporting what I do. So we need to have people that support and believe in what we do. You know, that's important. You can believe as much as you want in what you want to do, but if you don't have people behind you that are supporting you, It's gonna be very difficult.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Wow. Actually, that kind of makes me think of. I wanted to ask you, similar to Carlos asked about your time in Goombella, I wanted to ask you about your time with Fort Apache and with Jerry and Andy Gonzalez, because that kind of seems that band was kind of like the synthesis of these two different paths you were on simultaneously. That band was like, I mean, for in my mind, that's like that was like the first band to really be masters of both sides at the same time and really put it together in an organic way. And to have been there at the founding, you must have been there for a lot of incredible experiments, a lot of incredible musicians getting together and just sharing. So I would tell us about that time.
Check it out. Before my wife took it down from there because I guess she thought it wasn't gonna look good. But from that time I was showing you before. Look at this.
Yeah. What a band. What a guest. Deep.
What year was it?
This was 1990. I mean, I'm sorry, 1980.
Wow.
November 1980. That was I had that on my wall there. Yeah. I mean, like, what can I tell you? I just showed you a flyer of the people that and the funny thing is that the New Rican Village was like the base, where all sparked, where all came together. And when I say the New Rican Village, the instigators of that was actually always Jerry Gonzalez and Andy. And Jerry, I remember Jerry always called, because Jerry used to own a van, so he would call everybody and then he would come pick everybody up because we're playing for free. We're playing for the door. We're playing for free. But when I'm talking about, like I just said before, well, you just saw the flyer. On this flyer, we got on this game we had Andy.
Hello?
I think his signal got.
Yeah.
Yes, that to me was my school. That was
Papa, we lost you for a second. You froze for a second. Can you go back to that thought? Uh-oh.
me.
Now there you are.
Am I back?
You're back.
So anyway, that's the basic. Listen, when I came to New York, the first band I played with for 2 or 3 months was Chocolate. Then from there to Larry Harlow, and then from that I started playing with Conjunto Libre. And from Conjunto Libre, we started doing these jam sessions at the New Rican Village. And then after a while, Jerry took over, and then that's when Hilton Ruiz would come in, and Steve Teray also invited Steve Teray to come and be part of that, or probably was Hilton. I'm not sure, but Steve was there, and Nestor Torres, Andy Gonzalez. But the thing is that thing happened, or that thing was able to be a success musically, because the basic elements for a band were there, and those were Andy and Jerry. So you have the bass and you have the percussion. So all you need is a horn player, and you got a band. You have a trio. You know what I'm saying? So I remember that to me was the beginnings of, I was extremely lucky that those guys gave me an opportunity to be part of that, So from there, from the New Rican Village, that thing evolved to the place called Soundscape. And from that evolved the Fort Apache band. And I'm pretty sure I will dare to even say that because everybody used to come down to jam with us. I think that's where Tito Puente came and hired that man to become the first Tito Puente Latin Jazz Ensemble.
Small band.
Right. But like I tell you, see, like we were all playing the Latin dance bands, the Latin dance clubs here in New York City, which don't exist no more, unfortunately. You know, it's sad, but that was a real marvelous era here in New York. You know, there were like 100 different clubs, nightclubs, a lot of gigs, and a lot of bands, and every band had you know its own band members and its own sound, and it was a whole beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. But the progressive younger guys, you know, we wanted to be jazz players, so that's where this came from, you know. And I would say from that also was sparked Batacumbele to answer Carlos, to go back to Carlos. But Batacumbele was created in Puerto Rico, or actually Batacumbele started in New York in Eric Figueroa's house, my brother-in-law's house, because I was there. I was supposed to go with them at the beginning, and then I said no, because I was part of Fort Apache. Then all of a sudden, the Mario Rivera could do. He recorded, but then he could do the first gig. They called. They still wanted me to go to Puerto Rico. I went down there, and then I fell in love with my wife. Then the rest is history. But Batacumbele was a revolutionary. Was a very experimental and a whole different thing for Puerto Rico, because our band was like a concert band, you know. Semi-concert, jazz, songo, whatever, rumba. It was a whole new thing for Puerto Rico. Was basically, they used to have seen the dance bands with the singers and the horn players in the back, and that's basically it. Batacumbele was the horn players in the front, and Giovanni playing a solo for half an hour. It was like crazy. You were like, what? You know? So I remember doing gigs with Batacumbele, and we be alternating with a Gran Combo, right? With a Gran Combo and Batacumbele. So when a Gran Combo would play, people would dance. When we would play, they would stop dancing and they would just watch. It was a whole different thing, you know. It was a beautiful experience. We all paid a lot of dues, but we're all extremely grateful that we were able to be part of that.
Wow.
Now, why was it called the Fort Apache?
Huh?
The Jerry Gonzalez band.
Uh-huh.
Why was it? What was the origin of the name Fort Apache?
Oh well, there's a section in the Bronx called Fort Apache. It was like I think there was a police precinct there that was called the Fort Apache because it was just in a really bad area or something.
Well, there was a takeover of the police station.
Yeah, but exactly, but I'm not, you know, I'm not too sure. Just to be honest, I really don't know exactly the history of it, but I know that because Andy and Jay, they're from the Bronx, and they decided to call this band. I think I remember now. It was that, yeah, exactly. Now I remember Jerry saying that the reason was because and so let me correct myself and walk this back. Yeah, they call that area like a bad area, and that wasn't true. So Andy and Jay believe that wasn't true. That thing was to prove to the world that good things were coming out of that area. That's what it was. That's why he called it the Fort Apache Band, to prove to the world that out of the South Bronx salían cosas chéveres. Good things would come out of there. There you go. Now I got
it. Killing. Cool. I'm gonna change the topic up a little bit now, but I wanted to ask you about how you balance your lives as a composer versus being an instrumentalist, because you do both of them a lot. You do both of them prolifically and on an extremely high level, and I know that those are two different muscles, two different skill sets, and I wanted to just ask you how you balance the two of them and reconcile the two of them.
Well, you know, if you definitely you can't. I try to at least, let's say, if I'm going to sit down to write some stuff, I always try to play my horn a little bit every day, even if it's a little bit. But if I want to be like, if I want to do a performance, if I want to, let's say if I prepare myself for a recording, we're gonna record the Mighty Pirates Troubadours, I would take months. Let's say the recording is gonna be in July. I start writing stuff in November, whatever, or try to do. Plus, as a writer, you know, composing is a thing that, you know, you should always be open to like, you know, when you get an idea, sit down and write it down. You get an idea, sit down and write it down, or I have a digital recorder, and I just sing the ideas, or with the phone, you know, have an idea. Oh, they're there. I got an idea. Oh, I start singing, singing stuff, and then what happens is that I forget that I even put that on my phone. Then like months later, I go like, oh, what is this? Like, oh, wow, that's a great idea, you know. So it's basically, as a composer, always be open to just ideas. And be willing to throw them out in the garbage too. Like, you know, one day an idea might be good, then the next day you hear it, you go, that's una porquería, that's a piece of junk. It's like, I don't know if you guys ever seen that thing, was it Mozart or was it Beethoven? It was one of those movies, and he was in his room and the whole room was full of papers and junk. You're like, he would write something, that's no good. Like, I don't see it. He just keep on throwing stuff out, you know, until he finds something that he likes. And so now, wait a minute, I don't want to throw this note. This is an important note. So in other words, so if you're gonna record something, if you're gonna do a recording, you should definitely give yourself, as an instrumentalist, a couple of months preparation to get ready. And that doesn't mean you're gonna be ready, you know, because like I said before, like, you know, even J.J. Johnson said it, the trombone is a beastly instrument. So like, you know, so you the best thing you can do is prepare yourself to the best to the best of your abilities, you know. Yeah. And like that, you just gotta give yourself time. You just can't start practicing 2 weeks before the recording, you know. And what I do, I actually isolate myself. So if I make a mistake, I could record it again. Hey, Michael, did you get that one, Michael? Whatever you do, when you do a record, make sure they put yourself in a little room. No, I'll record in the bathroom by myself. No problem.
So in your music, how much of the, well, I guess, how much of like the rhythm section parts are through composed in your music? Like, do you have, like, I'm always impressed on your records that you have things that you'll have one track to the next could sound like it could be from two different records, from two different areas of well, I guess I was going to say the record store, but that doesn't really exist anymore. don't get too shocked. No, but you have music that you have one track from the next on a record could sound like they're from two different records almost, just because of the different styles they're doing. And I'm just curious, like, a lot of times you'll have the same cats playing on it, and so how much of that is written out? How much are you instructing the guys in the band of specifically what to play and versus bringing their own thing? Because I feel like you walk a very specific balance when it comes to that, to that area of band leading.
Well, like let's say, for example, the drum chair. My drum chair in the Mighty Pirates Troubadours, I had decided many years ago that I wanted that chair to be a jazz chair. Mm-hmm. You know, a jazz player, but it had to be somebody that was willing to submit to learn how to play our style and learn the different concepts and the language. Mm-hmm. And as a composer over the years, what's happened is that, because, you know, let's say La Plena doesn't have, you know, the indigenous plena, the traditional plena doesn't have no drums. You know, That's not part of their language.
Doesn't
So
have
how
drums.
do you incorporate the drums into that? What's happened is that after many years of trial and error, and of course I've been very fortunate to have like some of the great percussion players. Let's say like Anthony Carrillo, or even Roberto Cepeda from the family Cepeda be part of my band, and the list is extremely long of percussion players. You know, and I'm extremely grateful. You know, Tito Cepeda, Joe Gonzalez, Milton Cardona, Steve Berrios. I'm telling you, there's a long list of collaborators with me. You know, so what I would always do is I would write something and then I would give it to the drummer, say, what do you think? You know, it's like I don't write something and shove it in your face and say you got to play this. No. It's we collaborate, and I, you know, and because sometimes I'm a trombone player, I can write something that doesn't make no freaking sense. Yeah. So I got to pass that to the drummer. Check it out. What do you think? Can you play it? And then of course we bring in the other percussion players, and then we actually, the Mighty Paris Troubadours, we actually do percussion section rehearsals or rhythm section rehearsals. I'm just talking about just drums and percussion.
Yeah.
To check grooves and make sure that things are making sense, you know.
Mm-hmm. Who are some of the drummers who are some of the drummers that have passed through that chair, and what are some of the different things they've brought to the band?
Well, you know, now the drummer now is for the last I think 10 years or so, it's been Alvesta Garnett. Mm-hmm. You know, with my band, I've been fortunate that when somebody comes into the band, they love being part of this of the family, and they love the music so much that they just stay. And I, you know, and since there's so much information, and our book is so big, it's like, you know, I'm just happy to have, you know, and but I'm always incorporating other guys, you know. Now the guys that have played that drum chair over the years, and Negro Hernandez, Daphne Spieto, Victor Jones, Ronnie Barrage, Felix Rivera, oh man, Steve Rios, you know,
got like the history of Latin jazz drums in New York.
Yeah, it's like a list of gangsters that are gonna come and rob you. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey guys, that was a joke. Come on, kidding.
That was a joke for some of them.
It's like a list of these guys are these guys are these guys. Now those are all great, you know, super. And the thing about, you know, I was thinking the other day, I said, somebody says something, said this, and I said, you know, that makes a lot of sense. Smart guys, these guys are all very smart, all of them, very intelligent, you know. Mm-hmm. It's everybody, you know, music, you know, to be a musician, you really gotta
yeah,
you gotta be, you know, you gotta use your head.
Now, I've always wanted to ask you this, like, can you kind of articulate what, like, the different ways the band feels and the different things, like, different guys will bring, like, just taking the names Alvesta Garnett, Victor Jones, and Horacio Negro Hernandez, for example, just like each of those guys must like is coming from such a different school of drumming and has such different backgrounds, influences. Yet it's all Pirates Troubadours, and like can you kind of articulate the different things each, like different guys from different backgrounds will bring into the band? Because I can imagine.
It's just different, you know. They're all different, so it's like nobody's better than nobody else. They're all different, you know. And it's funny because we've done records and we've had like two of the drummers at the session, you know, like. And I say, okay, you guys are gonna share the recording. You do this half and you do this other half. And those guys, you know, they love each other. You know, the common denominator in all this is basically a lot of love and respect.
Yeah.
A lot of love and respect.
Yeah. And now I'm kind of just curious about asking the same question for bass and piano.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Like the same way we have a percussion, you know, a rhythm rehearsal. We have. I sit down with the bass and you know, and we have saxophone or we have horns and piano and bass, and we sit down and we just play to the music. And we actually, you know, some of the stuff that we play is like really hard and like, da, 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 but we actually rehearse that stuff real slow. You know, and I actually do rehearse my band real slow too. You know, so everybody can understand that it's like a little puzzle. You know, look how the puzzle goes.
Yeah. Wow.
Zach, I'm getting hungry.
You're getting hungry. You didn't eat before this? I didn't tell you to eat before this.
It took me like 3 hours. I don't think so. Not today.
I didn't tell you to bring
part two. We got to do part two.
I didn't tell you to bring a sandwich in a brown paper bag.
No, I'm gonna invite everybody. We're gonna go have pizza after this.
Yeah, man. Wow. I'm just who are the bass players that have passed through the Pirates Troubadours over the years?
Well, right now we got Ariel Robles, Benitez, John Benitez, Andy Gonzalez. Oh man, Lincoln Goings. Man, it's a whole bunch. Tony Batista. Yeah, I'm about to break out the records, but that was basically it. Like I told you before, what happens is, you know, the band has been, I've had my band for almost 40 years, but every time somebody, we get a new member in, or we get somebody to cover a new chair, that person stays on that chair for a long time. You know what I'm saying? So like, you know, chairs belong to, like right now the chair belongs to Ariel, but before that it was actually Desron Douglas's chair. And actually it's still Desron's chair because Ariel came into subbing for Desron. And I'm kind of proud like that because all these guys that have performed with my band, unless if they're not around no more, you know, they will come back and play with the band. You know, so I'm proud of that.
Yeah. Wow. Does anyone else have any questions?
Excuse me.
I was see if anyone else had any questions about this or anything related to anything we've talked about.
I think everybody's getting hungry.
I think you're getting hungry.
I just want to say, I want to say something. I'm really grateful that you guys are with us. I mean, it's amazing that, and I really think your work on the trombone has actually influenced a lot of people. And actually, you know, so you gotta keep that in mind. It has influenced a lot of people that has actually integrated the Cuban, Puerto Rican, and New York kind of playing. Actually, you know, I'm from Venezuela myself, so I can see this whole thing. But thank you very much for your information, man.
We're here to be a service. We're here to be a service, Carlos. You know, and you know, this thing started, you know, way back in the 40s when, you know, I guess the whole Afro-Cuban explosion and all that, Afro-Cuban jazz, But this thing has evolved into, you know, Afro-Puerto Rican or Venezuelan guys from Venezuela doing their thing, guys from Colombia. This is you know, we have. How can I put this in a nutshell? I think it was Miles Davis. Somebody asked him about the future of jazz, and Miles went like this. And the guy said, "What do you mean by that?" He was pointing south of the border.
That's right.
Isn't that something?
Sure. All right.
That's amazing. I mean, it makes sense because I mean, you know, the music from south of the border has the same history as and roots as jazz. It's all branches of the same tree. It all makes sense.
Well, you know, Latin America is a big chunk of the earth. You know, so we're talking about Peru, Puerto Rico, Santo Domingo, Venezuela, Colombia, Brazil, Argentina. Forget it. It's endless. It's endless.
Just to give you an example, I'm researching the number of countries and number of cultures that exist in Latin America. And so far I have 216 different cultures. And I have 17 different countries. and each country has an average of about 5 or 6 different cultures. I mean, so that's a humongous amount of information that we need to collect. So there you go. And it's growing. It's growing. And in the United States, actually, it's growing more because particularly between Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of people that are from Puerto Rico and from the Dominican Republic that are getting together. And those two cultures are growing up. Actually, one of the best, I was surprised to see that one of the best players of Puerto Rico bomba is actually a Dominican.
Uh-huh.
I mean, they're young, and they're mixed blood, so they don't have any, but they're Americans who live in, actually, one of our sponsors of one of our movies. I mean, Zafir, he was born in the United States. He's from Northern Indian. He plays bass, and now he got the haranga from from his movie that he produced, and he wants to introduce to the United States. So it's a mix. It's a mix, which makes it a very good opportunity for us to actually integrate it. It's actually, this is becoming a much more integrated country than ever. So thank you.
Does anyone have any more questions before we let Papa go eat dinner?
I don't know, maybe it's too big, but I was wondering if you could maybe answer what are some of the most important or best decisions you've made in your career?
To marry my wife.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I'm very, very, very lucky. I've chosen very good people to just surround me and help me and stuff. Like I said before, you can't survive this by yourself. This is very difficult. That, and I don't know. I guess one of the best decisions in my life was to play music. Music it's a marvelous thing. It's a very difficult profession, but we serve a very beautiful purpose in humanity. So we should all be very, very proud of what we do, and it's like the cliche saying, imagine the world without music,
It also sounds like it also from what you said before, it sounds like we partially have meeting your wife to thank for you being part of Bata Goombella.
That is actually true.
That's actually, we need to meet.
Important.
Where is she?
Lena, they're calling you.
Actually, we had a question online that I was curious about too. Someone asked, what are you currently reading and listening to?
What am I currently reading and listening to?
Yeah.
It's funny, I had a very, very good friend of mine. His name was Lena. They want to say hello to you. It's my wife here.
Hello.
Hola. Thanks for hanging in there.
So you are the boss now. So
okay.
Sorry.
Okay. What was that question, Zach?
They want to know what you're reading and listening to these days.
Oh. Well, nowadays, with this whole pandemic thing, I got to watch a lot of what was that? Cartel de Colombia and Cartel de Mexico. A lot of see, check this out. No, I don't want people to misunderstand what I'm saying. The trombone, I'll never forget that. Well, I think it was maybe Caruso, or was it one of my first teachers. He said you could practice your trombone and watch TV. So that's been like I think even a lot of the other guys, they practice and they watch TV. So I've been watching a lot of TV and I practice my long tones. But in terms of music, I mean, listening to music, you know, I'm a big fan of Hermeto Pascual and Camarón de la Isla, but you know, I mean, all Jobim, you know, Cortijo, all the whole thing. But I kind of like, you know, the other day I was listening to Natalie Cole singing her dad's music, but I kind of like kind of shy away from listening to a lot of stuff nowadays. And I think it was influenced by a friend of mine. His name was Miguelito Colón. He was the one that actually introduced me to. He was a genius trombone player, no longer with us. A genius, super bad cat. And he said to me, you know, Papo, if you're gonna compose your own music, don't listen to too much music. I said, what do you mean by that? Even though that's not really good advice, but you know, nowadays I kind of like tend to shy away unless, I mean, once in a while I'll sit down and then up, you know, but the stuff that I listen to is, you know, like I just mentioned, it could range from John Coltrane to the other day I was listening to Art Blakey, and you know, the whole spectrum. You really gotta sit down, you know, and since you touched that subject about listening, or they asked that question, I'm also very fortunate that I got to hang out with Jerry and Andy and those guys because they had a gigantic collection of records. We used to sit down and listen to everybody. I remember listening to everybody. Elise Regina, Charlie Ming, I mean, the whole thing. You know, well, this for Carlos. Fefita La Grande. You know what I'm talking about? I listened to all the whole thing. You know, the whole Juan Luis Guerra. You know, J.J. Johnson, Curtis Fuller, Barry Rogers. You know, Clifford Brown, Miles Davis, Sonny Rollins. The whole thing. Wika. I was listening to Wika the other day. You know, it's Stravinsky. You know, Bela Bartok. You know, the books that I read. I got me see. I got a whole bunch of books that I'm supposed to read. You know, if there's a book that I read that really scared me to pieces was what was the name of that book? By Father Malachi Martin. I read that, Hostage to the Devil. That's a pretty scary book. I think that's where they got the. So that's the stuff that I did on, and I'm a big fan of Star Trek and Star Wars, and you know, I would have loved being on the spaceship with Captain Kirk.
I actually have a faint memory of you and my dad taking me to see one of the Star Wars movies in the theaters when they re-released them in the 90s.
Hey man, those things have marvelous scores by John Williams. Come on, man, you kidding?
Classics.
Yeah. Matter of fact, over here, see, like I'm see over here. If you look over here, let me see. That's all my classical music repertoire, original compositions for harmonic orchestral stuff. Hey, because I was affiliated with the Bronx Arts Ensemble for 15 years, which is a chamber orchestra.
Cool.
There it is. There. I hope I answered that question. I answered it, that and then some, right?
Yeah, as all the questions. It's been great. Do you have any parting words of wisdom for us? Any lessons from some of the masters you worked with you want to share with us?
I think that the most important thing the message that I want to relate to, the host has spotlight. Okay, to the young kids and to all the horn players, you know, the most important thing of what we do as horn players is to practice our long tones. Get a good sound out of the instrument, and please clean your instruments. That sounds kind of funny, but clean your instruments, wash your instruments. That to me, I've learned that, and I will always credit Reynaldo Holhead for showing me that. Years ago, he said, you got to clean your instrument, you got to wash your instrument. And then I realized that keeping your horn clean endears you to that instrument because it's clean. You wanna hug it, you know. Now, if your horn is funky, you go like, yeah. But if it's nice and clean all the time, you know, and practice your scales. Well, I was telling you that right the other day. It was an interview with James Moody, and they asked him, you know, so what do you practice, James? He said, well, major scales, and I was like, major scales. Then I understood what he meant. You know, if you practice your major scales, let me see, like this. Right, like that, in all the degrees of the scale. But if you practice it in all the keys, now you're practicing. Now you and you don't need a book or nothing. That's a very simple way to keep your chops and do a nice practice session. You can practice that in the park. And I guess that's about it. And I want to say thank you to everybody for joining in. And thank you, Zach. And I want to say hello to all our friends out there in the internet.
Thank you.
Much love and respect. Everybody keep safe.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Gracias, maestro.
Now I'm gonna go try my mask on. See if it works. You guys take care
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everybody.
All right. Yeah.